Good afternoon. Uh, I'm Ron Camperciani, C-A-M-P-U-R-C-I-A-N-I. I'm the police chief here in Mooresville. Before we get started on this, let me introduce the people that are here. You know Megan Suber, our press information officer. To her right is Commissioner Gary West from the town board. To his right is Assistant Chief Joe Cook, and to his right is Assistant Chief Bob Dyson. So we're sorry that you had to come out for something like this. There's no winners in events that happen like this. I would much rather be talking about the myriad of things that these men and women do good every day in Mooresville, but unfortunately this is part of the job that nobody likes. So what I will tell you is what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a prepared statement. It would be similar to the one that was put out this morning. I don't know how many of you have it or have seen it. We'll give you a copy. When I'm done, we're done with this, you can have a copy. And then afterwards, I'll take questions with some admonishments, and we'll get into it after I read the prepared statement. On Wednesday, November 8th, 2023, at approximately 3:44 a.m., Mooresville Police Department officers received a call from Lake Norman Regional Medical Center regarding an individual who advised hospital staff he was planning to do harm to himself in his vehicle in the facility parking lot. Lake Norman Regional Security observed the individual put a firearm in his pocket before he exited the facility. Upon arriving at the scene, Mooresville police officers observed the individual in the facility parking lot outside his vehicle holding a firearm. Officer issued multiple commands to drop the firearm. The individual initially complied, placing the firearm on the ground. The individual then picked up the firearm, posed a threat to officers. Officers immediately responded to the threat with one service weapon by one of the officers being discharged 5 times. The individual sustained multiple injuries. Officers immediately rendered life-saving and transferred the individual to the care of the Lake Norman Regional Medical Professionals. Robert William Berry, B-E-R-R-Y, 56 of Mooresville, succumbed to the sustained injuries while receiving professional medical care. Per standard protocol, the involved Mooresville police officer was immediately placed on administrative leave pending further investigation. North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation is investigating this incident simultaneously with the Mooresville Police Department's Internal Affairs Unit. So what I will tell you is, you know, on these tragic events that happen, like I said, where there's no winners in any of this, we try to be as open as we can with you. So I'll answer whatever I can, but I want you to keep in mind 2 things before you start asking me questions, because I don't want this to turn into, no, I can't talk about that, no, I can't talk about that. So there's 2 things I just want you to keep in mind. One, this is an ongoing investigation. It's still it's in its infancy. And second, it's not our investigation. Okay, so with that, I'll take whatever you have.
Chief, was the man, what was he doing at the hospital?
Our initial report that we got from the hospital staff was that he walked in, told these people in admitting, or whoever you first see when you go into the hospital, that he was there to kill himself, and he was going to go do it in the parking lot, and then he walked outside, and that's when they called us, and that's when they encountered him. He was outside. He wasn't in his vehicle. He was outside of his vehicle.
The whole time he was outside of...
When we arrived, he was outside the entire time, so I couldn't tell you if he actually ever made it into the vehicle or not, but he was outside the entire time.
Chief, how specifically did he pose a threat?
So, what I've seen on the body cam, and I'll speak briefly to this, because again, I don't want to get into anything with the SBI and what they're doing. I've watched it multiple times. He's told there's probably, I think I counted, we're about 7 or 8 commands, correct, to drop the weapon. The weapon is dropped. To me, it looks like it was dropped. It doesn't look like it was placed on the ground. He bends over. squats down, picks up the weapon, stares at one of the officers to the right that was the officer that ended up firing the shots, sits down against a tree, starts to manipulate the weapon at that point, rearms himself, and that's when officers fired.
Do you know how much time there was between when he put the gun on the ground and then picked it back up?
You know, his movements are very slow, but, you know, it's hard to, it would be like, if you drop your phone and pick it up, how much time elapsed? It's similar to something like that. A little slower. He seemed to be a little lethargic to me, is what he looked like, which, I'm not a doctor, could be a lot of reasons, but it was kind of slow and deliberate.
Did he say anything to the officers?
Never that we could see, there was never any communication that we could see, other than, like I said, he did look directly at the officer whose body cam we viewed, so it was clear he saw him, knew they were there, but there was no verbal communication between them.
What kind of de-escalation training do your officers receive? And obviously there's a component of mental health involved. Can you speak to that too?
Yeah, so, you know, de-escalation training is something we practice a lot. There's ways to do that, and this de-escalation training goes, as far as this incident goes, they're specific to each incident, right? So in this one, like I said, he was given 7 or 8 commands to drop the weapon. So as far as mental health issues go, we get that, and I understand that that's sort of the talking points now and something that's being readdressed, and we agree with that there should be mental health professionals. I think personally that the mental health profession should understand that it's not an 8 to 5 job Monday through Friday, and they need to be out there in the same time of the hours that we are to give people that are suffering the help that they need, because what do people do? They call us. As far as this incident goes, like I said, I think we did what we could do, and he had, whether he dropped it, it looked to me like he dropped it, whether he dropped it, but he rearmed himself for whatever reason. But, you know, and I don't want to be callous, but we don't, you know, we're armed with a lot of things, right? You see officers, they have a lot of stuff. What we don't have is a crystal ball. And we're all husbands and wives and fathers, and we have to go home too. And what he was doing, why he rearmed himself, what he was doing with a gun, was he cocking it, was he getting ready? We don't know, but we don't, if we wait, then we get hurt. So I agree with the overall blanket statement of mental health and de-escalation. I get all that, and we practice that and we do it, but it's case specific. In this case, those options were taken away from us. And I want to talk to something else, because I think it goes to your statement, and it's important that people understand this, because I think there's a misconception in the public about this. We're not in control of these situations. People think we're in control. That's the common thing, that police are in control. We don't control these situations. We try to control them. At the end of the day, the people that we're dealing with are really the people that are in control. If he leaves the gun on the ground and never picks it up again, none of us are here. We're all doing something else. Most of these situations happen because people have chosen to do something different that poses a threat. It's horrible. Like I said, there's no winners here. We wish it didn't happen, but that's just, unfortunately, this particular scenario, that's just how it played out.
Is there any indication that this was suicide by cop?
You know, I don't, again, you know, I don't know what it was in his mind. There was obviously something going on with him, and I mean that as a human being talking about another human being. And that's horrible. What that was, I don't know. Whether there was any indications, I don't know. We have some background information of what's been going on in his life in the last month, which I'm not gonna get into, but, and I don't, you know, and I'm not looking, we're not looking to pass blame. We're saying, well, it was ignored. I don't know what was done. You know, he was clearly in crisis, but certainly our 4-minute encounter with him didn't lend us to be able to make all that diagnosis on what exactly was going on.
Was this a man who was known to police at all prior to this?
Never, no.
Two questions for you. Did he ever have a gun inside the hospital that you guys are aware of?
So the statement I told you where the security guard saw him put the gun in his pocket, that's still, that's part of the ongoing investigation. So to be honest with you, I don't know exactly where they saw that. If they saw him put it in the hospital, did they see him walking out with it? Not sure about that. What's the second question?
Can you explain, so after he dropped it, picks it back up, you said he sits down at a tree?
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Mhm.
And so is that just like simultaneous, picks it back up, then goes?
Yeah, so he squats, so he like I said, I described it as him dropping the gun. Then he squats down, he looks over at the officer, reaching for the gun at the same time, looking over, sees him, sits back against a tree, and then he starts to do something with the weapon. It's hard to see, I mean, you can ratchet these guns back to get the chamber load, but for our thing, for some reason, and again, I don't know what that reason is, he decided to rearm himself. I think that's the key takeaway in this. They rearmed himself at that point for whatever reason. And listen, if he was suffering, which he may have been, here's the other problem. This happens all the time too, and I appreciate your questions, I really do. I think we're all trying to, and I don't mean this derogatory, it just is what it is. I think we all try to attach rational thoughts to what's clearly an irrational mind at the time, whatever's going on with him, right? He's not thinking, or they don't think like we're thinking at the time. So it's hard for me, I can't get in his head because I don't know what he was going through, but the questions are, listen, the questions are valid, I get it. I wish I could be more candid with you, but that's just, we attach thoughts to why would they do that? Why didn't he do this? I don't know. I don't think anybody can answer that question.
We'll take 2 more questions.
Did he actually?
What was the officer's name, and how long have they been on the force, or are you gonna release the officer's name?
So I'm not gonna release that now because it's still under investigation. Like I said, and I think it's important to understand too here because it was kind of glossed over in the press release. So there's 2 simultaneous investigations going on here. The SBI is doing the criminal investigation, and they're gonna determine whether or not the officer did the right thing or not. They're a separate entity. We don't have any control over them. They'll share their conclusions with us at the end, but we're not part of the investigation that they're doing. At the same time, we're doing our own internal investigation to see if he was within policy, did they do what they were supposed to do? Were they in policy? Did they do all the right things? And there's a myriad of things we have to look at with that.
Chief, clearly your officer felt a threat.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, this particular office has been on a number of years. And I think it goes without saying that, and anybody that tells you this is, I don't know, I've been doing this 38 years. I don't know of any police officer that's ever come into work and hopes that today's the day I get to shoot somebody. So we have to react on the situations that are presented to us. And like I said, we do de-escalation. Like I said, in this case, let's keep it to this particular scenario. He never picks up that gun, none of us are here.
And does Mooresville Police Department have any sort of protocol with certain calls of bringing in mental health officials?
Sure, when there's time to do something like that, absolutely, sure. And we reach out to those resources, and actually Lake Norman is one of them, and they were very good as far as, they helped, I believe, the wife right away with some grief counseling and things, right? So I mean, listen, that he felt the need to go there, which was, I applaud him for that, it's the right steps. He obviously felt he needed some help. Why it went in the direction it did, here we go again. I can't give you that answer.
He was seated when he picked up the gun again, correct?
No, he was, no, he was squatting down, rearmed himself, then kind of fell back against the tree, started whatever he was doing with the weapon at that point, but, yeah, so. Okay.
So he was seated at the point that he was shot?
He was.
Okay, if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to send them my way. I believe you all have my contact information. again, bear in mind, this is an ongoing investigation. We may not be able to answer any additional questions, but we're happy to at least consider them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.